The Great Escape tells the story of Allied prisoners in a German camp during World War II. They dig 3 tunnels. They make fake documents. They risk everything for freedom. The movie feels real because the truth behind it is stranger than fiction. What you see on screen hides wild stories, actors who almost died, stunts that went wrong, and moments when the director thought everything would fall apart. Let's dive in and discover 20 weird and amazing facts about The Great Escape. Number 20. The real camp was worse than the movie. The film shows Stalag Luft 3 as a tough prison camp with strict guards and cold nights. But the real camp was much darker. The actual prisoners suffered worse cold, less food, and brutal punishments. Director John Sturges softened many details because he wanted audiences to feel hope, not horror. The real Great Escape happened in March 1944. 76 men crawled through a tunnel called Harry. Only 3 made it to freedom. 50 were executed by the Gestapo. The movie doesn't show those executions in detail. Sturges knew that showing too much death would break the audience's heart. He wanted people to remember the courage, not just the tragedy. So he focused on the clever plans, the friendships, and the dreams of freedom. The prisoners in real life were colder, hungrier, and more afraid than the movie shows, but their bravery was exactly the same. What looked like adventure on screen was built on real suffering. Number 19. Steve McQueen demanded more screen time. Steve McQueen was already a rising star when he joined The Great Escape, but he wasn't happy with his role. He read the script and saw that James Garner and Richard Attenborough had bigger parts. McQueen went to the director and demanded changes. He wanted more scenes. He wanted to be the hero. John Sturges listened because he knew McQueen had something special, a dangerous charm that cameras loved. So Sturges invented the motorcycle chase just for McQueen. It wasn't in the original script. It wasn't in the true story, but it became the most famous part of the movie. McQueen trained for weeks to ride the motorcycle like a professional. He did most of his own stunts. He flew over hills and crashed through fences. The chase was dangerous and expensive, but it made McQueen a superstar. He got what he wanted, more screen time and more glory. Other actors were upset, but they couldn't argue with the results. When audiences saw McQueen racing toward the Swiss border, they forgot everyone else. One man's ego created movie magic. Number 18. The tunnel scenes were filmed in a real tunnel. The movie shows prisoners digging through dirt, crawling in tight spaces, and pulling wooden carts underground. Those scenes look real because they were real. The production team dug actual tunnels beneath the set. They went down about 4 feet and stretched for over 50 yards. Actors had to crawl through these tunnels for hours. The spaces were dark, narrow, and hot. Some actors were claustrophobic and struggled to breathe, but director John Sturges refused to fake it. He wanted the fear and sweat to be genuine. The camera crew had to squeeze into the tunnels with the actors. They used small lights and handheld cameras. Sometimes the dirt collapsed. Sometimes the air got too thin. The crew would stop filming and pull everyone out to recover. Richard Attenborough later said the tunnel scenes were the hardest work he'd ever done. He felt real panic down there. That panic shows on screen. When you watch the prisoners digging, you see real exhaustion and real fear. No special effects, no green screen, just men in dirt fighting for air. What looked like a set was actually a dangerous underground world. Number 17. James Garner and Donald Pleasance became lifelong friends. The Great Escape brought together actors from different countries, Americans, British, Australians, Some didn't know each other before filming started. James Garner played the American scrounger Hendley. Donald Pleasance played the forger Colin Blythe, a man slowly going blind. Their characters help each other throughout the movie. That friendship wasn't just acting. Garner and Pleasance bonded during the long months in Germany. They spent evenings talking about war, life, and acting. Pleasance had been a real prisoner of war during World War II. He was shot down over France and spent time in a German camp. He knew the fear and boredom of prison life. Garner, who had served in Korea, understood military life too. They shared stories that never made it into the film. On set, Garner protected Pleasance during the tough scenes. When Pleasance struggled with the bright lights because of his sensitive eyes, Garner made sure the crew adjusted them. After filming ended, they stayed in touch. They sent letters and visited each other for decades. Pleasance later said Garner was the kindest man he ever worked with. The warmth you see between Hendley and Blythe on screen was real love between two men, not just acting. True friendship born in dirt and danger. Number 16. The director changed history to make it more exciting. John Sturges knew the true story of the Great Escape. He researched it carefully. He read books written by survivors. But he also knew that history needed drama. So he changed several facts. In real life, no American prisoners participated in the tunnel escape from Stalag Luft III. The escape was entirely a British-led operation. But Sturges added American characters like Hiltz, Hendley, and Goff because American audiences needed heroes they could recognize. He also invented the motorcycle chase. In reality, no one tried to jump a fence on a motorcycle. Sturges didn't care. He wanted a moment that people would never forget. He changed the timeline, too. Some events that took months in real life happen in days in the movie. Some characters are combinations of several real people. Sturges believed that emotional truth mattered more than factual accuracy. He wanted viewers to feel what it was like to plan an impossible escape, to risk everything, and to lose friends. The changes made the movie better. They made it faster, more exciting, and more emotional. Historians complained, but audiences loved it. Sometimes a good story beats the truth. What looked like history was really art shaped by a director's vision. Number 15. The actors dug real dirt. For hours. The escape plan in the movie involves 3 tunnels called Tom, Dick, and Harry. The prisoners dig for months, moving tons of dirt. The actors didn't just pretend to dig, they really dug. The production team built underground sets, but they filled them with real dirt. Every shovel of dirt you see on screen was moved by an actor's hands. James Coburn, Charles Bronson, and others spent long days underground, filling bags with dirt and dragging them through tunnels. The dirt was heavy. It got into their eyes, their mouths, their clothes. By the end of a day's shooting, everyone was filthy and exhausted. John Sturges insisted on this realism because he wanted the audience to feel the physical labor. He wanted viewers to understand that escaping wasn't just clever. It was backbreaking work. Charles Bronson, who played the Tunnel King Danny, was especially convincing because he had worked in coal mines before becoming an actor. He knew what it felt like to be underground, surrounded by dirt, unsure if the walls would hold. His fear in the tunnel scenes wasn't acting, it was memory. The other actors watched him and learned. They copied his breathing, his careful movements, his respect for the earth above them. What looked like acting was really manual labor filmed by cameras. Number 14. The motorcycle jump was done by Steve McQueen's friend. The most famous shot in The Great Escape shows Hiltz jumping a motorcycle over a barbed wire fence. Everyone thought Steve McQueen did that stunt himself. He didn't. The jump was too dangerous. If the rider missed, he could break his neck or get tangled in the wire. The studio refused to let McQueen try it, so his friend Bud Ekins did it instead. Ekins was a professional motorcycle racer and stunt rider. He and McQueen had raced together in California. McQueen trusted him completely. On the day of the big jump, cameras were set up on both sides of the fence. Ekins revved the engine, sped across the field, and launched into the air. He cleared the fence perfectly. The crew cheered. It was a flawless stunt done in one take. But here's the weird part. Steve McQueen also appears in the same scene. He played a German soldier chasing himself. The director needed more motorcycles for the chase, so McQueen put on a German uniform and rode behind Ekins. If you watch closely, you can see McQueen chasing McQueen. He loved that joke. Years later, people still believed McQueen did the jump. He never corrected them. He liked being known as the man who could do anything. One stunt created a legend that lasted 50 years. Number 12. The film was shot in Germany near real prison camps. John Sturges wanted The Great Escape to feel authentic, so he filmed it in Germany, close to where real prison camps had stood during the war. The main location was near Munich in Bavaria. The countryside still had old barracks, forests, and fields that looked like 1944. Some local Germans who worked on the crew had lived through the war. They remembered the camps, the soldiers, and the fear. It was strange for them to see the prison camp rebuilt for a movie. Some older Germans walked through the set and cried. They remembered friends who had been imprisoned or killed. The production team treated them with respect. They made sure the film honored the prisoners, not the Nazis. The German government supported the filming because they wanted the world to remember what happened. They hoped the movie would teach younger generations about the cost of war. The local towns provided extras, ordinary Germans dressed as soldiers or villagers. They stood in a background of scenes, silent witnesses to a story that was also their history. Filming in Germany gave the movie a weight it wouldn't have had anywhere else. The land remembered the war, the trees, the dirt, the sky. They had seen everything. What looked like scenery was really a memorial. Number 11. Charles Bronson was claustrophobic. In real life, Charles Bronson played Danny, the Tunnel King. Danny is fearless underground, crawling through tight spaces, shoring up dirt walls, and leading the digging team. But Charles Bronson was terrified of small spaces. He had claustrophobia, a deep fear of being trapped. As a young man, he had worked in coal mines, and those experiences left him scarred. He hated the darkness, the weight of the earth, the feeling that the world could crush him. When he read the script for The Great Escape, he almost turned down the role. But he needed the money, and he respected the true story. So he agreed to do it, even though he knew it would be torture. Every day he spent in the tunnels was a battle with his own mind. His hands shook, his breathing became shallow. The crew noticed but didn't understand why. Bronson never explained. He just kept working. In one scene, Danny has a panic attack underground. That scene wasn't fully scripted. Bronson used his real fear. He let the camera see his terror. His eyes go wide, his chest heaves, and he looks like a trapped animal. It's one of the most powerful moments in the film because it's real. Bronson fought his fear every day and won. What looked like acting was really courage captured on film. Number 10. The film's budget nearly ran out. Halfway through The Great Escape was an expensive movie. The studio gave John Sturges a big budget, but he spent it faster than expected. Building the prison camp, digging tunnels, hiring hundreds of extras, and filming in Germany all cost more than planned. Halfway through production, the money was almost gone. Studio executives panicked. They considered shutting down the film. Sturgis begged them for more time and more money. He promised the movie would be a hit. The executives didn't believe him. They thought the film was too long, too expensive, and too British. American audiences wouldn't care about a bunch of prisoners digging holes. But Sturgis refused to give up. He cut some scenes, fired some crew members, and worked faster. He also got help from the actors. Steve McQueen and James Garner agreed to delay part of their payment until after the film was released. They believed in the project. Their faith paid off. When The Great Escape premiered, audiences loved it. The movie made back its budget and became one of the biggest hits of 1963. Number 9. Steve McQueen's baseball glove wasn't in the script. One of the most iconic images in The Great Escape is Steve McQueen tossing a baseball against the wall of his cell. He's locked in solitary confinement, bored and restless. He throws the ball again and again, catching it in a worn leather glove. That baseball glove wasn't in the script. It was McQueen's idea. He brought his own glove from home and started playing with it between takes. John Sturgis saw him and realized it was perfect. The baseball became a symbol of American identity, a small piece of home carried into a German prison. It made Hiltz feel more real. McQueen loved the bit so much that he insisted on more scenes with the ball. Sturgis agreed and built an entire sequence around it. The sound of the ball hitting the glove became a rhythm in the movie. It's lonely, repetitive, and hypnotic. That sound tells you everything about Hiltz. He's bored, he's stubborn, and he won't break. McQueen threw that ball thousands of times during filming. His arm got sore, but he didn't care. He knew the baseball made his character unforgettable. Decades later, people still remember the man in the cooler with his glove. Number 8. The film's music was composed. In just 3 weeks, Elmer Bernstein wrote the music for The Great Escape, and it's one of the most famous movie scores ever created. The main theme is bold, heroic, and instantly recognizable. It sounds like freedom. But Bernstein didn't have much time to write it. The film's editing took longer than expected, and by the time Sturgis was ready for music, the release date was approaching fast. Bernstein had only 3 weeks to compose, arrange, and record the entire score. Most film composers get months. Bernstein worked day and night, writing music at his piano, barely sleeping. He wanted the music to feel like a march, like prisoners walking toward freedom. He used trumpets and drums to create a military feeling, but he also added strings to show emotion and loss. The main theme was written in one afternoon. Bernstein played it for Sturgis, who loved it immediately. That theme plays over the opening credits and returns throughout the film. It makes the audience feel excited and sad at the same time. When the music plays over the final scenes, it becomes a funeral march. Bernstein captured the whole story in a melody. The music makes the movie bigger, braver, and more beautiful. Looked like months of work was really a desperate sprint against time. Number 7. The actors used real escape tools. From World War II, to make the escape scenes believable, John Sturgis wanted real tools. The production team contacted museums and private collectors in Germany and England. They borrowed actual tools used by prisoners of war during World War II. Some of these tools had been hidden in Red Cross packages. Others were smuggled into camps by resistance workers. The prisoners had used knives, files, and small saws to dig tunnels, forge documents, and cut through fences. The actors held these same tools on camera. James Coburn held a file that had once cut through German wire. Richard Attenborough touched a compass that had guided a real escape attempt. The weight of history was in their hands. Some actors felt uncomfortable using them. They knew these tools had been touched by men who died. But Sturgis insisted. He wanted the audience to feel the connection to real events. The tools added something you can't fake: authenticity. When you watch the prisoners working, you're seeing real artifacts. The past reached into the present through metal and wood. What looked like props were really relics that remembered freedom and sacrifice. Number 6. Donald Pleasance was almost replaced. Because of his eyes, Donald Pleasance played Colin Blythe, the forger who is slowly going blind. It's a heartbreaking role. Blythe knows his eyes are failing, but he keeps working because the escape depends on him. Pleasance brought deep emotion to the part, but the studio almost fired him before filming started. Pleasance had very sensitive eyes. Bright lights hurt him. He had trouble keeping his eyes open under the hot studio lamps. During early camera tests, he blinked constantly and squinted. The producers thought he looked weak on camera. They wanted someone more handsome, more Hollywood. John Sturgis refused to replace him. He knew Pleasance was perfect for the role. Sturgis adjusted the lighting to protect Pleasance's eyes. He used softer lights and shorter takes. Pleasance was grateful. He gave one of the best performances in the film. The scene where Blythe realizes he can't see clearly anymore is devastating. Pleasance didn't need to act. He knew what it felt like to struggle with his eyes. His real vulnerability became Blythe's vulnerability. Audiences loved him. Critics praised him. The studio admitted they were wrong. What looked like a weakness became the character's greatest strength. Number 5. The cooler was a real punishment cell. In the movie, prisoners who break the rules are sent to the cooler, a small isolation cell with a hard bed, no heat, and a tiny window. Steve McQueen's character spends a lot of time there. The cooler in the film was based on real punishment cells used in German prison camps. John Sturgis built a replica that matched the size and design of the original. The cell was barely 6 feet long and 4 feet wide. There was no room to move. The production team made McQueen spend hours inside it for filming. He said it felt like being buried alive. The walls pressed in. The air was stale. He understood why prisoners went mad in there. In real life, men were locked in coolers for weeks. Some lost their minds. Some died from cold or starvation. The movie doesn't show the worst of it, but you can feel the cruelty. When Hiltz throws his baseball in the cooler, he's fighting to stay sane. McQueen's performance makes you believe it. He didn't need much dialogue. His eyes told the story. What looked like a set was really a copy of a torture chamber. Number 4. Many actors were veterans of World War II. Several actors in The Great Escape had served in World War II. They knew war firsthand. Donald Pleasance had been a British bomber crewman. He was shot down and captured by the Germans. He spent months in a prisoner of war camp. When he read the script, he cried because it brought back terrible memories, but he wanted to honor the men he had known. James Garner had served in the Korean War. He understood military discipline and fear. Hannes Messemer, who played the German commandant, had been a German soldier. He was captured by the Russians and spent time in a prison camp. Playing a camp commander was deeply strange for him. He saw the war from both sides. These men brought real experience to the film. They didn't need acting coaches to tell them how soldiers moved or talked. They knew the weight of a rifle, the sound of boots on gravel, the look in a guard's eye. Their performances feel real because they lived through something similar. What looked like acting was really memory, pain, and survival put on screen. Number 3. Film was banned in Germany for years. When The Great Escape was released in 1963, it was banned in Germany. The German government didn't want their citizens to see it. They thought the film made German soldiers look too cruel. They worried it would reopen old wounds and create anger between Germans and the Allies. Some German politicians believed the movie was propaganda. They said it exaggerated the suffering of prisoners and ignored the fact that many German soldiers were just following orders. The ban lasted for several years. German audiences didn't see the film in theaters until the late 1960s. When it finally played in Germany, reactions were mixed. Some Germans were angry. They felt the film was unfair. Others were moved. They said the film showed the tragedy of war without glorifying anyone. Over time, German opinion softened. Today, The Great Escape is considered a classic in Germany too. Film schools teach it. Historians use it to discuss how movies shape memory. What looked like entertainment was really a political statement that took years to be accepted. Number 2. The final scene was changed at the last minute. The ending of The Great Escape is powerful and sad. After the escape, most of the prisoners are captured. 50 are executed by the Germans. The film shows their deaths quietly, with a list of names. It's heartbreaking. But that wasn't the original ending. John Sturges had filmed a longer, more detailed scene showing the executions. It was brutal and graphic. Studio executives watched the rough cut and panicked. They said audiences would leave the theater depressed. They demanded changes. Sturges argued with them for weeks. He believed the truth had to be told, but the studio threatened to bury the film if he didn't make it softer. Reluctantly, Sturges cut the execution scene. Instead, he used a simple text screen listing the names of the murdered men. It was quieter, but somehow more powerful. The silence said more than violence could. Audiences sat in shock. They understood what happened without seeing it. Sturges later admitted the studio was right. The quiet ending made the film stronger. What looked like censorship became art. Number 1. Steve McQueen predicted the film would make him a legend. Before The Great Escape was released, Steve McQueen told his agent, "This movie will make me the biggest star in the world." His agent thought he was crazy. McQueen had a supporting role, not the lead. The film was an ensemble piece with many stars. But McQueen knew something others didn't. He knew the motorcycle chase would blow audiences away. He knew people would remember him throwing the baseball. He knew his cocky smile and fearless attitude would make Hiltz immortal. He was right. When the movie came out, critics praised the whole cast, but audiences fell in love with McQueen. He became the face of the film. His poster appeared everywhere. People didn't talk about the tunnels or the escape plan. They talked about the man on the motorcycle. McQueen's career exploded. He went on to star in Bullet, The Thomas Crown Affair, and Papillon. He became the king of cool. Bonus fact: the real prisoners consulted. On the film, before John Sturges started filming, he met with several survivors of the real Great Escape. These men had been in Stalag Luft 3. They had dug the tunnels. They had forged the documents. Some had escaped and been recaptured. 3 had made it all the way to freedom. Sturges asked them to describe everything: the smell of the dirt, the fear in the tunnels, the sound of German boots. The survivors told him stories that weren't in any book. They told him about the boredom, the friendships, the tiny jokes that kept them sane. They told him how it felt to crawl through Harry, knowing that guards might discover them at any second. Sturgis took notes. He changed some scenes based on their memories. He added small details, the way prisoners hid dirt in their pockets, the way they practiced walking casually while carrying contraband. These details made the movie feel real. The survivors also watched some of the filming. They stood on the sidelines, tears in their eyes, as actors recreated moments they had lived through. Some said it was too painful to watch. Others said it was healing. They were glad the world would remember. John Sturgis gave them a gift. He turned their suffering into art that would never be forgotten. Old tools, new magic. The Great Escape is more than a war movie. It's a story about the human spirit refusing to surrender. It's about men who dug through darkness, hoping to see the sun. It's about friendships born in dirt and fear. The film shows us that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and moving forward anyway. Steve McQueen, Richard Attenborough, Charles Bronson, James Garner, and all the others gave us characters we'll never forget. But behind those characters were real men who lived this nightmare. They dug, they ran, they died. The movie keeps their memory alive. Every time someone watches The Great Escape, those prisoners escape again. They live again in the light of a screen, reminding us that freedom is worth everything. The weird facts you just learned show how much work, danger, and heart went into making this film. Nothing was easy. Nothing was fake. The tunnels were real. The fear was real. The courage was real. If you enjoyed these stories, subscribe for more. Every movie hides a truth, and we'll keep uncovering them, one story at a time.